Design and creativity has no boundaries. It's not a yes or a no. It's not like maths or science. You really, really delve into what a person is like. How do they function? What do they need? That's the biggest thing. What do you need? And therefore, how can we help you within your environment to create a life that helps you be who you are? You really are who you surround yourself with to a certain degree. As humans, I think we're like sponges. We take in, absorb, we listen. That's where our knowledge comes from. Our knowledge comes from experiences, from people around you. If you're doing something yourself, it's not because you don't like it. You're only going to put your energy towards something that you absolutely love. I do believe when you are truly yourself, your raw self, you will achieve what you want to achieve.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Need to Succeed podcast. We are back again with another phenomenal guest. Like I always say, what this podcast is all about is really understanding the mindset of successful people. Because you can get a situation where two different people go through the exact same situation. One person decides, because of the situation, I'm going to go on to become wildly successful. And the other person decides, because of this same situation, I can no longer achieve the things that I want to achieve. Same situation, different outcome. What is the mindset of the successful person? That is exactly what we look to unpack on this podcast. And today we have an absolutely incredible guest. She is doing incredible things within her industry. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Neha Modha.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
You're very, very welcome. Very welcome. Okay. I'm really excited to have you here as well. We conducted actually a networking event and we just got speaking. I was like, it's incredible. Like, I've got to have you on.
Yeah. The energy was just fire.
It was incredible.
It really was.
I was really inspired by the conversation. So I think, let's get on the podcast. So I'm super, super excited for everyone listening, to really get to know you a little bit more as well.
Yeah.
So that'll be cool. Awesome. So let's get into this. Let's do this, right? So, we've got a tradition on the podcast. And the very first question I hear is, what does success actually mean to you?
Oh, we don't mess about, do you? Straight in there. What does success mean to me? I think it depends how you measure success. So if you asked me 4 or 5 years ago, um, a lot of people, the traditional way of looking at success is something tangible, something physical, something you're aspiring to, something you want to achieve. So a goal you've probably had on your vision board or a financial goal. And I remember being nominated for an award in the first year Studio Moda started the business. And in my mind, I thought, great, that's one part of success for me, something tangible, something physical. It's an award within the industry. And I remember receiving it. And we went to a bar after the event where everyone congregated. And I was looking at this trophy and I just thought, okay, now what? Cool, I've got it. But now what? And you know what was missing? A feeling. There was a feeling of numbness because you've got this thing that you've been wanting or looking forward to. And actually, success is probably the day-to-day activities. For me, it's adding value, sharing knowledge. And that's not just towards a client, that's with peers, with colleagues, with friends and family. Knowing that I've been being able to bring about a change, a positive change, I think that for me, and that's what we do day to day. So it's not a big goal, it's not a big vision board that I'm aspiring to. I think it's a feeling that makes me feel a certain way that I'd probably say is what success means to me.
Wow, that's it's so powerful, and I know my editor's gonna be watching this right now, and he's gonna be laughing because we were talking about some clips from the podcast the other day, and he said, bro, I couldn't get too many clips of you because sometimes you say the same thing, right? And I said to him, yeah, because success leaves clues. Like that is it's pretty. There's not something new really for me to say because I'm just talking about my experience and also what I know works for people. But he the example you gave me goes, oh, you're always talking about inputs and outputs, all right? And like the outputs is this massive, this goal, this end goal, you
Yeah.
want, and people tend to focus on that. But actually, if you just focus on the inputs, then the outputs are going to come anyway,
100%.
right?
100%.
And
And
so I
when
know he's going to be laughing watching this right now. You said it again.
it's when you chase a financial goal, you're not looking at the big picture. You're just looking at what's my end goal? How do I get there? Here's a strategy. You're not enjoying what you do.
Yeah,
That's what gives you the daily success that you probably need
yeah,
actually to get to your final goal.
yes.
Um and people forget that.
Yeah, 100%. I genuinely couldn't agree more. I was watching the podcast the other day with someone called Rob Moore and Stephen Bartlett. So Stephen Bartlett was actually on Rob Moore's podcast and was talking about, when these people have these massive exits from a company. Just today, you're now worth 200 million.
Mm.
You've just sold your company, now you're worth a billion. And oftentimes these people then kind of go into depression because you're thinking, what? You just become a billionaire. But it's not about like it's literally just numbers in the bank account. Now
Yeah.
when you think about
Yeah.
it, for you to become a billionaire, you've already actually had that lifestyle. Like, if you've got 5 million in the bank, what really much more can you actually do in terms of like your day to day that a billion? Like, cool, I've got more zeros in the bank, right? But now they've lost that something, that company they've built where they were coming in
Mhm.
every single day. They had targets, they had goals, they were motivating people, they were, doing things to grow that baby and things. Oh, we've hit this milestone. Oh my god, that's incredible. All that's not gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you've lost actually is your passion.
Yeah.
That's what you're missing. So what you actually loved doing day in day out, what you were working towards, the energy you put towards it. Let's be honest, if you're doing something yourself, it's not because you don't like it. You're only going to put your energy towards something that you absolutely love within
Mm.
reason. I have to caveat that because, um but that's what you're missing. When you've sold that for X amount of money, you're right. You going from 5 million to 20 million is not going to change your lifestyle drastically. You're probably being able to do the same things that you did with 5 million. So what are you missing? There's something, the thing that you love, your passion.
Absolutely, absolutely, awesome, man. I love that introduction. I love that style. I love the answer to that question because actually, what I found is a lot of people who sit on that chair is where this is called the Need to Succeed podcast, and people think you're going to talk about money and all of that. And look, I always say I'm a capitalist, so I understand the need to make money. But oftentimes, what I find with successful people is money is never really the driver,
Mm.
right? Money is not the end goal, for these people. So yeah, that was great to hear. But what we love to talk about in this podcast is the journey because I truly feel there are, first of all, there are certain things that happen, across your journey that really kind of defines who you are now. But also, it's in that journey to get to where you are today. That's where the real lessons
Yeah.
are, right? That's where all of those nuggets are. So I always like to get to understand, my guest a little bit more. So, who was Neha as a child growing up?
Who was me as a child growing up? Wow. I need to bring some home videos in to have a look at that. I was let's talk about toddler. I was a crazy curly haired child um, who was just excited about life, you know, and I was free. I think we always look back from, growing as a human, you look back to your early years and you just think about how free you were. There was no fear, there was no one telling you to do what you had to do. You just did what you wanted and there was excitement. There's excitement in your journey. You weren't thinking about what am I going to be when I grow up, you know? And I've got two sisters. So we would make up games, we would play with, really basic things, sand, water. We didn't need phones, we didn't need screens. We made up games. And actually that's probably where my creativity came from.
Mm.
And both my sisters actually are very, very creative. So we learn how to make up all these different types of games, and it wasn't something that we were given. It was actually, I really do believe that creativity is innate. You can't show someone, you can't tell someone how to be creative. And then as you grow up, you go to school, you've got SATs, you've got GCSE, so much pressure is put on examination.
Yeah, what was school like for you?
Um, what was school like for me? I wasn't the best child,
What
wasn't
does
the
that
best
mean?
student. I didn't really care too much about studies, to be completely honest. I wasn't focused. I wanted to question everything. I've been really, really curious as a kid, always. And I think it was probably my rebellious nature that made me want to do things out of my comfort zone. I didn't want to stay in my comfort zone. Found it boring.
Mm,
Just I didn't want to do things. I've always had this thing in me. I don't want to do things that everyone else does. Just want to do something different. I wanted to explore different things.
mm.
And that's probably led me to make the choices that I've made throughout my life. So I actually studied philosophy as my undergrad, which is completely different. I think at 17, 18, you're at school. Culturally, we were always taught you go to university, you get a job, you get married. This is your lifeline.
This is the
This is
path,
this is your path.
standard.
This is what you do. And since sort of day one, since we were told those things, I thought, no, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. I just want to do something
Interesting.
I love.
Did you vocalize this, or this was just internal?
Always. I'm too vocal.
Yeah.
Always.
Okay.
And I don't feel shy about it. I think the other side of it is always trying to be authentic.
Hmm.
And I do believe when you are truly yourself, your raw self, you will achieve what you want to achieve.
But coming from your, are you Indian?
Yes.
Indian background. Okay, cool. So kind of coming from that background, very similar to a Nigerian background as well.
Mm.
It's if you're vocalizing stuff as a kid, this is not gonna go down well, right?
Yeah.
So how was this being received at the time?
Not very well.
Yeah.
I think I'm the firstborn as well. And I was the firstborn girl of the family.
Hmm.
And so that was a big thing culturally. And in our culture, I mean, back in India, not so much here. You're kind of told if you have a son, if you have a boy, they carry on your bloodline, they carry on the family name. There's a lot of pressure, I think, as a son, and a lot of value that's held as a son. And you do get told. I mean, I remember my dad going to India and someone said to him, "You've got three girls. What are you going to do?" And he said, "What do you mean? They're going to grow up however they grow up. In fact, they'll probably be stronger." And that's something that we've always been taught from a young age. Be independent to a certain degree, but obviously when you vocalize, you are shut back a little bit. So it's a bit,
Independent to everyone else, just not to me.
yeah, just not to me. It's a bit contradictory, but we have always been told, stand up for yourself, be who you are,
Mhm.
sort of unapologetically. And I think it's hard culturally being growing up in a Western culture where my dad came here when he was sort of 6, so he's grown up here most of his life. But my mum didn't come here until she was about 26. So her mindset is very different. And I think navigating through almost like sometimes I felt like I had a dual personality, you know, um, trying to navigate through a Western society, but also keeping your roots.
Mm.
So trying to be vocal, trying to push them out of their comfort zone. I think that's really what happened growing up. As much as I was forcing myself out my comfort zone, I was pushing them way out their comfort zone.
Mm.
And that's really when life became interesting, even for them. And I think if you were ever to talk to my dad, he would say it's just nonstop from me. It's always a question. It's always, why don't we try this? Why don't we do this? And, you
Where do
know,
you think? Where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from, seeing other people around you. Also, I was lucky enough to be in a friendship circle who, everyone was very unapologetically themselves. And you really are who you surround yourself with to a
Mm.
certain degree. As humans, I think we're like sponges.
Mm-hmm.
We take in, absorb, we listen. That's where our knowledge comes from. Our knowledge comes from experiences, from people around you. And I was lucky enough to be around people who were very, very driven, career driven, driven lifestyle wise, personality wise, and quite outspoken. In fact, as a child, I'm saying, I was curious and vocal, but I think there was also a part of me that was a bit of an introvert at school because there were so many personalities.
Mm.
So not only do you want to find your own pathway, you also want to be heard and
Mm.
seen at school with friends, and it's really difficult.
That makes sense, actually. I was going to come back to that and say, because I know typically in schools, strong personalities, or someone who's of a rebellious nature, there's there's a counter to that school. The teachers almost an element of what we're gonna suppress, all of these kind of feelings within you. How was that experience for you at school?
I think because I wasn't so focused on studies. I mean, I remember having. I don't think I ever had a good parents' evening ever, and that for an
You were
Indian
that kid.
child, I was that kid. I mean, for an Indian child, that's just it's a no go.
It's embarrassing, isn't
It's
it?
an yes. It's and it's you feel shameful, and I remember being at parents' evenings, and if my dad ever hears this podcast, he's gonna laugh. There's one particular parents' evening, and my teachers basically said to them, she's underperforming. She's not interested. She's more interested in what she wears and what she does, and puts all these colors together. And so even then, as a kid, I was so interested in design and being creative. And I remember my dad saying to me, "We're just going to take you out of school." And I was thought, what does that mean? And she was like, "We're just going to take you out of school. Why am I paying for a private school when you're not concentrating?" And the funny thing is, it was funny to see my teachers' reactions, and they almost turned and said, "Oh no, she's really capable. She's just not doing it." And I think that just goes to show, if you put your mind to it, you can definitely do it. But I think the flip side is, there are certain schools that focus so much on education, and cultures that do really focus on education, that you do suppress the creative sides.
Mm.
I think if we were driven more that way in school and allowed to explore, I might have started my career in design a lot earlier on.
Good point. So do you think ultimately that the school or the system or your parents, did they win that battle in the end then? Because like you said, you didn't start your career, you didn't go to study what you're doing now. So how did that kind of, did you succumb to the pressure in the end?
No,
No.
no. I loved philosophy, and I did that because I wanted to,
Okay.
and I don't regret that one bit.
What
I
was it?
think it really teaches you to see things from different perspectives, and even our day to day. I'm so client faced, and we're working with clients who want to make a home, their dream homes, a space that they love, a space they can come home to, a space that's safe. And it's all about perception, because design and creativity has no boundaries. It's not a yes or a no. It's not like maths or science.
Mm.
There's no yes or no answer. It's, you really, really delve into what a person is like. How do they function? What do they need? That's the biggest thing. What do you need? And therefore, how can we help you within your environment to create a life that helps you be who you are?
That's interesting. So you actually feel like the philosophy is a massive element to what you do now. It really
Yeah,
helps you.
yeah,
That's
100%.
interesting. But in choosing philosophy, like what was the reason? What was the path to come to that? I'm gonna go and do philosophy. How did you get to that?
Oh, it's so simple. I didn't know what else to do.
Okay.
There's no sort of exciting journey behind how I got to doing philosophy. It's something I loved at school.
Yeah.
Um, I did it at A level, and I think being a curious mind, always wanting to know different perspectives, always knowing and understanding there's not only two sides to a coin, there's three, four, five, six.
Mm.
That's really what made me really interested in philosophy. And I thought, well, I'd love to actually delve into that a little bit more, and at 17, 18, you either go down a very vocational route where you want to be a lawyer or a doctor, and you've got to have certain grades and subjects you've studied in order to do that. I was definitely very humanities focused, all about people, all about
Mm.
understanding. I did psychology at A level. So it's all about understanding people, behaviors, their environment, the mind. I think the mind is something that's always really, really interested me. And if I could go back and learn more about that, I would 100%.
Interesting. I mean, I can definitely see how that would help with what you do, because for you to be able to create a space for someone that they're gonna love, you really need to understand that person, and what makes them tick, what doesn't make them tick, how would they, what would really make them excited about this place, which
Yeah,
means you need to be able to formulate and ask the right questions. And I'm guessing, something like philosophy would help you in that. Once you
100%.
kind of get to know them, you could know how to ask them the questions to get the right answers out of them.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think when a client approaches you, they don't know what they want. They don't
Mm.
really know what they want. They've gone on Pinterest, they've gone on Instagram, they've gone on all
They go on
socials.
Pinterest and just looking at all
Because,
these
I
glamorous
mean,
pictures.
yeah, I mean, Chat GTP is probably going to design homes for us soon, so I need to find a way around that. But really and truly, they're seeking a professional.
Mm.
Why do we go to a doctor when we're not feeling very well? I mean, there are a lot of people out there who do self-diagnose. That doesn't mean it's the correct thing to do, but you seek a professional in anything that you want to do. So it's the same with design. And you don't really know what you want. So it's our duty, it's our job. That's what I'm here for,
Yeah.
to take you through that process, and it is a journey. And it's funny, we when we work with couples or families, and people always say, this is really going to make or break our marriage. And you do feel like you are at some level of therapy throughout the journey, but it's amazing. you
Sitting
know
there trying to like, no, she's kind of right. See what she's,
yeah.
he's got a point there, and
No, it's amazing. You get to know, and that's why we do a lot of residential projects. You really get to know people. That's what I
mm,
love about that. You
amazing.
really, really get to know someone. You get to know not only them, their families, because your home is not really just for you.
Mm,
How do you entertain? How do you host? Do you host? Do you have people over? It's about how people are using that space, and you really, really delve into someone's personality,
um,
things that they may not have even thought about.
yeah. I mean, I can certainly imagine that
Yeah.
awkward moments. But let's talk about the journey then, right? Because we started a philosophy, and now we're kind of getting into home designs and all of that. So we're at uni, we're doing philosophy. Like, how do we end up here?
So I've always wanted to do something creative. I think I've always had that. I just didn't really know what it was. And I think, truth be told, I never thought I could turn design into a career.
Mm.
That comes from the culture we come from. Like I said, we're taught, go to school, you go to sixth form, you do your exams, you do A levels, you go to uni, find someone, you get married, you have babies. And you're not really told anything in between. You're not guided. You're not exposed in probably the way that maybe we wanted to be. And so that journey was very organic for me. It wasn't even in my mind. I wasn't trying to find a way of making a career out of something creative or design related. I think I just got to a point where, we were living in halls for the first year. And I remember I had a water pipe running through my bedroom. And the first thing I remember thinking was, I need to hide this. This is horrible. And throughout the 3 years I was there, we moved houses, we changed places, we had different sized rooms, we had different things in our rooms. And I was always very geared towards making a space that I felt comfortable in. And not only my space, it was whoever I was living with in their spaces.
Mm.
And it was very much about creating a space that, like I said, serves you, but also fits your lifestyle. So at uni, you're in and out, you're going to lectures, you're going out. And so you need a space that's very functional, and you can't bring your whole wardrobe from home. So you've got to get creative. And that's when I really, truly realized, actually, I'd love to do this forever. I'd love to
Interesting.
do this as a day
So
job.
this is your second or third year you were thinking this?
I thought this in towards the tail end of my second year.
Yeah.
And that's when I started researching. I was like, okay, so I don't really want to do another 3 year course. I just want to get into it. I want to get stuck into it. This is what I want to do. And I think I'm a very impulsive person. And over the years, being a business owner as well, I've really had to rein that in
Mm.
because, you know, impulsive means creative. I think when you look at it that way, when someone's very logical, very organized, you may not, this is a very big generalization, but you may not have that spark of creativity, organically. And I think a lot of people who are very creative are very impulsive and reactive. And I'm very reactive. And again, it's something you have to work on. But it's it's something you kind of learn to do over time, and that's when I started researching. And you sort of rein yourself in and go, right, okay, what's the logical pathway? What can I do? And I actually ended up getting an internship straight after I finished my third year. Finished in July, started the internship end of July, did it for 3 months, because I thought, if this is something I want to do for, a long period of time, I need to really make sure it's something tangible and it's something that fits my idea that I've got in my head.
Yeah.
And I did it for 3 months. The company actually asked me to come back after I finished my studies and see where they were at and if they could take me back on. I loved working there, and I knew from the first day I started, this is what I wanted to do.
Wow, that's incredible. But that's really interesting though, because we're talking a whole year of discipline, right? Like, why did you not, me, as soon as I had that thought, I just dropped out of uni, right? That was kind of for
Yeah,
me. But
yeah.
like, I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, because what you've done there is a lot of discipline to say, okay, what, I've started this, I'm going to finish it. But what was that process like for you, knowing actually I see my future here now?
Mm.
How do you still persevere?
I think you sort of hit the nail on the head when you said disciplined. I'm very disciplined in what I do. When I start something, I will finish it, whether I like it or not.
Why is
In
that?
this case, I think I'm just wired that way. And I think as a child, we were taught, if you start something, you finish it. You've committed. There's a level of commitment that nobody else has told you to do it.
Mm,
You've actively chosen to go there, and you've got to finish it. And so I think that was drilled into us from a very, very young age.
mm,
And a lot of that comes with a level of fear. And, you sort of go through life and you think, well, I've started this, I need to finish it, because if I don't finish it, what's going to happen? So there was an element of fear in that as well. But I
mhm.
think, especially with the course, I loved it. So I didn't feel like, I had to be reactive and drop out.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I think the other thought I did have was, if design doesn't work, or if I wanted to choose a different career path further down the line, I have my degree. Now, that's a very traditional way of thinking.
Mhm,
Again, it's something we were taught culturally, from
mhm,
my parents. And I think that really comes back to the way they grew up, their
mm.
environment. They didn't have those opportunities as easy. So for them, it was, well, I want my kids to be educated.
Exactly. I think it's a fair compromise. I think if I was advising my child, I wouldn't tell him to drop out uni when I did. Right, Johnson, I was saying, nah, stay there, because it does make sense, right? You're never sure. Yes, you want to go down this path. Yes, you could be wildly successful at it, but you've already started this. Why not actually finish this? And potentially, this is something that you can come back to.
Mm.
But if you just throw everything into this basket, because I think a lot of people, I hear a lot of it now, and even though I went down that path. I don't think it's necessarily right to try and tell people, oh yeah, well, uni is not the one. There's a lot of people who actually uni is the right path for them, right? Depending on what they actually want to do,
Yeah.
and them not exercising that option in the future could actually come to haunt them when they realize, well, actually, this is what I love, this is what I want to do. So I think seeing that through to completion is actually it's first of all, it shows discipline, but also it gives you more options as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. But I have to say, I think the way the world is moving at the moment, it's in a very different direction to what it was, even when I was at uni. And for certain things, for anything vocational, of course, you need that degree. It's very traditional in the way you need to get into that sort of career path. But I think anything creative, you can learn. You
Mm-hmm.
can't learn how to be creative, but you can learn the softwares around it. You can learn how to, it's like an internship, an apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
You learn on the job. If you look at any trades, they don't have qualifications per se. They don't do a degree in plumbing. They don't do a degree in electrics.
They might beg to differ. They did. I mean, they do have to
They
put in
do.
some
They
work.
do. They've
Yeah,
got
there's
qualifications, but it's
qualifications, not degrees. Yes.
not degrees. But I think what I'm trying to say is, it just goes to show that, of course, there's a level of learning. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a level of theory based learning, which is then very applicable. But it's things you can learn.
It's a different path. You don't need to go to uni to be a plumber, right?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they'll try to categorize everyone into this. You just got to go to uni anyway, which is like, no, I know I want to be a plumber.
Yeah.
So it's actually,
Yeah.
what's the point of still going down, wasting 3 years and then coming back and
Well,
doing another year
exactly.
or two, in plumbing?
Yeah, exactly. And I think everyone's different. And I think it's a societal pressure as well of, oh, you've got a degree. Okay, great. But, how does that transpire in the next few years?
Yeah,
I think that's really, the education system is what it is. And people are changing, humans are changing, businesses are changing,
yeah,
the way they operate are
yeah.
changing. And I think that's really what you have to look at.
Absolutely. I do think that is starting to shift now. I think there's a different mindset. I think what we're talking about now, a lot more people actually understand that concept. And even if you look at the conservatives, they're kind of pushing these apprenticeships and going out there, getting the hands-on experience, kind of like what you did, even though it was after uni.
Yeah.
Right? But that learning process of understanding, on the ground what you have to do could actually be a lot more beneficial for different types of industry as opposed to going through uni.
Yeah. And I think that shows growth as
Yeah.
a human. You know, as amazing as doing the degree was and going to uni, I mean, I can't tell you how many lectures I actually went to, but it's an experience in itself.
Mm.
So I think, if we actually pin the fact that you get a degree from university, actually, really what you're looking at is an individual who's out on their own for 3 to 4 years, 4 years if you're doing a master's or a year in industry, and actually you're learning to be independent.
Mm.
That's what it's teaching you.
Mm.
And I think it's so easy to forget that side of going to university. Yes, you get a degree out of it and it will help you in whatever you do. But I think the reality is you learn you learn growth as a
Yeah.
human. You learn to be on your own. You learn how to cook,
The
clean,
problem, the
fend for
problem
yourself.
with that is, yeah. I mean, that's good. I get what you're saying. The problem with that is we're no longer, we're not Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, who kind of promised that he was going to, abolish tuition fees, right?
Oh yeah, we still got that on our
And
heads.
then now all of a sudden it's like, well, actually, we can't really afford it. Rightly or wrongly, whatever. But the point is, we can't just go and dust around for 3 years and come out with £45,000 worth of
Of
debt.
course.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, do you know what I mean? It's like,
Of
it's a
course.
big debt just to go and learn how to be independent. You know what I'm saying? But I do know exactly what you're saying. I would accept that pitch more than just go to uni just because it's what we've always done, right?
Yes.
It's more palatable. So I completely understand that. Okay, cool. So from your standpoint, you've gone to do this internship. You've realized actually this is, I love this stuff. So did you, when they offered you the extension, did you take it?
So I took the extension of the internship itself.
Yeah.
I then got into the design school that I wanted to get into, and it was a course for 1 year, but it was 3 years into one, and it was probably the most intense thing I've ever done.
Oh.
Way more intense than go to uni
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
doing my degree.
It's condensed into one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's constant, it's non-stop, but you power through because again, it comes back to that's what I was really passionate about. If you're that passionate about something, I genuinely believe no matter how difficult it is or the number of hours you need to spend on it, your mindset shift that you actually have to do to be able to get through those number of hours, you just do it.
how far does passion take you?
I'm hoping till the end.
Yeah. I'm not talking about you personally, but I'm just saying generally, how far can passion take you as a business owner?
I think if you love what you do, unapologetically love, unconditionally love what you do, that's what's going to drive you every day. So it's not about your goals. It's not about what you want to achieve, big term, long term. It's what you want to achieve daily.
Hmm.
And I think if you're ticking those off, and let's be honest, there's going to be ebbs and flows. You're not going to love every single day of what you do because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard. I think that's the reality of it. But
Mm-hmm.
you overcome how difficult it is because of your passion,
Mm-hmm.
because of your drive. Usually, if you're passionate about something, you're driven enough to see it through. And if you come to a point where you feel like it's not for you, you've either lost passion for it for numerous, could be anything for whatever reason it is. And that's okay. You may not love what you do forever, but I think as long as you love what you do for the time period that you want it to, it will take you to where a natural end to it.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. That's why I wanted to ask that question because I think there's a podcast, Eddie Hearn, who's like a boxing promoter. I think he got a podcast called No Passion, No Point.
Mm,
Right? Because as entrepreneurs, you're always gonna come across difficult periods in your business. Like it's going to happen. And the truth is, if you're not passionate about your mission and you're not passionate about the things that you're trying to do, the reality is when you come across those difficult points, it's a whole lot easier to just quit right there and then.
100%.
But if you're passionate, if you're driven, if it's bigger than just that individual roadblock you've just come across, then that passion is going to drive you to push through those difficult
Yeah.
times, and that's when you get the rewards at the other end, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't have that, or that passion, like I said, comes to an end, you know that's a natural organic end for whatever you're doing. And I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure on entrepreneurs. And if you look at the most successful entrepreneurs, they don't just have one business, they have multiple, because that's, you're doing what you love.
Mm.
You're driving it in a way, and we're alive to be able to do different things. We don't need to contain ourselves to one thing. No,
Mm.
you don't need to do that forever. Will I do design forever? I don't know, but I know I'll do something creative
Mm.
for sure.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, cool. So, so you've taken this extension. Yeah, that's what we were before, right?
Yeah, sorry, I keep diverting the
No, no, I
conversation.
took it somewhere else. I went asked about passion and then went down this passionate route.
So yes, took this extension, went to KLC, which is the design school that I went to for a year. Within that year, I did about 3 to 4 internships whenever we had breaks. So I was constantly making sure that this is what I want to do.
Hmm.
I had to be sure. Again, that comes from pressure, from fear more than pressure.
You've mentioned that a couple of times now. What do you mean by fear?
I think it's the fear of failure. We grew up, again, it takes us back to our parents' generation. Being an immigrant, coming to this country, there was no option to fail. You just couldn't, financially. They had to drive, they had to graft, they had to do whatever needed to be done in order to have food on the table. That was their reality. So I think for them, failure wasn't an option. And because of their experiences, when you have kids, you pass on your experiences. You don't want them to go through what you went through, and etc., etc. And I think a part of that was managing your risk. You're never really taught that. Assess your risk.
Hmm.
You're never, in your lifetime, school, you're never taught that. And I think there was always a part of me that thought, if I fail, it's an end game. And actually, having the company, having failed in many different types of ways, all it does is teach you.
Hmm.
It's a journey. It's your own journey. It's the journey of the company. It's the journey of where you want to be. It's the journey of your passion. And if you succeed, or if you achieve a goal that's something you've been wanting to do, what do you learn in that time period?
Yeah, that's the thing about failure. I think failure, the word itself, has actually been bastardized now because people use failure in the context of negative,
Yes.
like you failed, it's finite. It's like this is the end.
Yes.
This is a failure. But the reality is, failure is actually means learning. Like it means you've now figured out a way to not do something and you're going to try something else. And that other way might also fail. But then
Yeah.
you're going to learn and then you're going to do something else on to the point where you break through that. But that's not to say you're not going to fail. Again, it's almost as if failure is this, you failed. It's not like an end result. It's just a journey towards where you actually want to be in. But the word has not been bastardized, and people not take it as a negative connotation,
Yeah.
and they actually allow that to hold them back, which is really sad.
Yeah, it is. And it held me back for a very, very long time. It was only at a point where I think there was a point in my life where I had no control over anything. Anything I wanted just didn't go my way. I had no control over it. And the mindset shift I had at that point was I just had to let go. Nothing could be perfect. It couldn't always be the way that I wanted it to be. And COVID really helped me actually. So we started the company just before COVID hit. Had no idea that was going to happen. So I'd resigned. I had no idea. I was basing starting this company on one project,
Wow.
one potential opportunity, and had no idea what way that was going to
Potential.
go.
So
Potential.
you hadn't signed no
No,
contracts.
no.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, it's either now or never.
But you've just spoken about fear and fear holding you back. So how do you make a decision like that?
I think it comes back to when I said earlier, I'm a very reactive person. So it's a bit contradictory because I
Mm.
do have this fear. There's always this little devil, on the side of your, well, they say it's on the side of your shoulder. I don't know where this devil is, but it's always in you, it's in your mind. But I think you just have to push through. But because I'm such an impulsive and reactive person as well, there's a bit of I haven't really got that balance right still.
Mm.
And I just went for it. And I didn't really believe in manifestation, but there was something in me. I remember my first interview that I ever did with a company after I came out of design school, and the first company that wanted to interview me, and they asked me, "What's your 5 year goal?" I was 21 at the time, sorry, 22 at the time, and they asked me, "What's your 5 year goal?" And I said, "I want to own my own company." And I remember the director laughing, said, "You probably shouldn't say that in an interview." And I remember walking out thinking, God, I really didn't get that.
Hmm.
I've just absolutely failed that interview. Why would you want to hire someone who has no intention of staying at your company for
Hmm.
5 years? But again, I think it's always being authentic and raw to yourself.
Hmm.
That's genuinely my goal. Um, and they hired me. They actually hired me. And I think it just depends on the way you view life.
Mm. Let me ask you a question. Would you do the same? Because you left that company, right?
I did.
And started your own business.
I did.
How many years later?
So I joined that company in 2016. We started the company in 2020, so 4 years.
5 years, almost 5 years later. You literally told them the plan.
Oh,
And then you're done.
well, I didn't have a clue. I didn't know if it would actually
how,
happen.
how did that exit go? How was it received?
So I wasn't. I actually worked with a different company in between
Okay,
as well.
okay,
So
okay.
I left that company and went to work for another company. And the exit from the second company was probably not received very well.
Yeah.
And I think you have to take it with a pinch of salt. If one of my employees, I mean, I know at some point, some people that we do hire are going to say, "I've had my time here. I've served the purpose that I needed to, but I'm moving forward." And for me, it's if you're authentic about that and you genuinely come in and say, "Well, this is my path. This is what I want, and I've been really happy here." I'd support you. And don't get me wrong, to have to find someone else and go through that
Mm.
process again. But actually, I know what it's like being in that position. So for me, it's about supporting an individual.
How did it? How did it? How did they receive it when you said you were gonna go and set up yourself?
So, I mean, at that point, I was actually in two minds. I didn't
Yeah.
know whether I was going to set up myself. I didn't know whether I was going to go freelance. I mean, originally, I'd actually asked for a sabbatical from the company because I really enjoyed where I worked,
Hmm.
but I had an opportunity that I really wanted to do. And I felt like that was the only option at the time, trying to compromise on both sides. How do I exercise this opportunity, but also stay in the company that I really, really love?
Hmm.
So for me, it was a conversation, and it was a conversation really, really ahead of time, almost 8 months before I was even planning to do anything. And for me, I just thought, well, I'm trying to be as open as possible. And I'm actually being really genuine about it. I'm not saying I'm off to another company and then I'm going to start my own. I was just being true to myself. And unfortunately, it wasn't received in the way that I probably wanted it to. And that's probably a number of different ways. It's a shock to the system as an employer because you probably don't know your employee is thinking about X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
And then you actually probably go in survival mode because you're thinking, I need to replace this person. well, this person does X, Y, and Z.
Clients.
We need to, what about, yeah, what happens to clients? They've got a trust in this person. So at the time, I didn't really understand it. But, when I look back, it's not personal. And I think that's where when you look into businesses and you look at employees and you look at relationships, a lot of the reactions aren't personal.
I do think it's personal though. I'll caveat that in a
Hmm.
second. But firstly, how did it make you feel the way they reacted to you telling them that?
I think in that moment, it was quite sad because I'd given a lot to the company and I genuinely loved being there. I loved the people. I'm still in contact with the people. And we really created a good team. So I thought, being open and honest about what I wanted to do and the journey, and actually giving them almost 8 months notice was a good thing on my end.
Mm,
So I expected a not a positive response, but
understanding.
what, I understand. I
Yeah,
understand where you are, and although we're really upset and X, Y, and Z, we support you.
yeah.
And I think that did come about later on, as they digested it. But I
Okay.
think the initial reaction was a defense.
Okay, that's fair enough. I was gonna blast them, but yeah, if they came around, so it might have been an initial reaction. But the point
Yeah.
is, when I said it was personal, doesn't mean it's kind of personal to you, but it's personal on the individual how they
Mm.
react to something, right? Because ultimately, it's you don't own me. I
Yeah.
work here, right? It's an
Yeah.
exchange of service. You pay me, and I give you a service. So when I'm saying, okay, cool, that time has come for me to go somewhere else, for me to do something else, why should there be a negative reaction? Why
Mm.
should you, almost like explode and make you feel like a certain way because you're making that decision? So it is a personal thing because, like you've just said, I'm an employer now myself. That situation comes up, I would deal with it differently.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
now, that could be from lived experience. Maybe you would have been a dick about it as well if you hadn't gone through, what you've
Yeah. I
gone
hope not.
through. Exactly. But I just think typically it comes down to who you are. So
Yeah.
that's what I meant by it is personal. It's that individual
Yeah.
person. That's how
You're
they
right.
chose to kind of react to that,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes every business owner and every business so different.
Mm-hmm.
Because although everyone has a plan and a game plan and a business plan, and this is what I want to do in 5 years, the reality is it's not always going to happen. You may not stick to that pathway. Your end goal, your output, like you said, may be the same, and that's what we're all reaching towards. But actually, it's all about creating a team that can sustain what you are doing day
Mm,
to day, but also making them feel like you're part of the team. That's really important for me. Any business I've worked in, and they were all small businesses, as an owner, you become really far removed from your day to day. And don't get me wrong, I think we all, as a small business, want to do that because it's not
that's the
sustainable.
dream.
It's not sustainable. I can't do that. But how do we still keep that personal touch? How
Mm,
do we still interact with everyone? For me, it's important that the people we bring on board actually get on with each other first of all.
yeah,
But it's not just about what we do within work time. It's how you work together. What do you do outside of work? It's your personalities. So ultimately, a business is a business, and your skill set is your skill set. But your personality is really what makes it.
absolutely, absolutely. So how was that transition for you then?
Um, in terms of being a employee and then
And
a
then starting,
employer.
starting your
Yes.
own, the timing when you started it, everything.
Oh gosh. So like I said, it was Jan 2020. I'd resigned in December 2019 with a
Oh,
potential opportunity.
if only
So
you
so
knew.
not even I had no idea what I was doing. um,
If only you knew what was coming ahead
and
two
I
months
know,
later.
I know. And then COVID hit. So, I actually took off a month before I did anything. And I'm really passionate about dancing. So I actually trained for about a month. So I did something completely different, something that was more physical for my body. And it just helps you ground yourself, I think, from your
Mm,
day to days of doing what you do day in, day out, 9 to 5s. And I trained for a while, and then I became a business owner. And I thought, I didn't have a plan, didn't have a business plan because my original plan was to be on a sabbatical and just do this project and go back. Now that didn't work. and COVID happened. So we're in March 2020. The weather's beautiful.
That
So
was good.
that was good. And I spent a lot of time in my back garden for a few months.
Like this business thing is easy.
And, and I just thought, what am I going to do?
Mm,
And I remember thinking that a lot. What am I going to do? So a lot of cold calls. It was a lot of trying different platforms, etc., etc. And come June, July, got my first client.
wow.
Oh, by the way, this potential project is nowhere to be
Oh,
seen.
wow. I was just about to ask about that. Yeah, what happened to this?
Is nowhere to be seen at the moment. It did
Mm,
come around. But in that moment, I just thought I gave up a paycheck, a monthly paycheck
mm.
that I still could have had during
I
COVID.
was gonna say, and you would have still been at home,
And I was,
and you would have been getting
yes,
the paycheck if you just waited 3
I
months.
know, I know. Why didn't anyone tell me? um, so it was, but I mentioned to you earlier, there was a point that my mindset shifted. That was the point where it shifted because I had to let go.
Mm,
I couldn't control the fact that we were at home, that we were in a pandemic. I couldn't control the fact that this potential project was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't control the fact that nobody was wanting to work with me for the first few months. And I just thought, okay, that's when I really worked on myself
yeah.
and my mindset. And
Mm,
that's the biggest change that I saw within myself. And
mm.
I learned to let go. I learned to stop being so particular about everything. I still am, and it's just part of my nature. But you learn that things just happen.
That honestly is so incredible because I coach and mentor people myself, and the first module in my training is psychology. Because the truth, I always say to people, it doesn't matter what the strategy is. It doesn't matter what the business is. If you haven't got this right, nothing really works. And, during COVID, a lot of people, a lot of businesses closed, a lot of people lost their jobs. And,
Yeah.
but you just kind of decided, well, I've got no options. I haven't got a job. I've sacked that off. Like, this is make or break. So you literally got on the phone, you were making cold calls, right?
Yeah.
Even the
Yeah.
opportunity that was kind of there, that kind of disappeared for a little while. So in those moments, you make a decision, you truly find out who you are.
Yeah.
And the successful entrepreneurs understand to dig in, make those phone calls, do whatever it takes, to make it through those periods. And, that's obviously what you've done. So, what an incredible, incredible journey.
Thank
So, like,
you.
I mean, what does, how's business now?
It's really good.
Yeah.
Touch wood. Everyone touch wood. No, we're really, really fortunate, and I think actually what we saw during COVID was a lot of people were wanting to make their spaces comfortable. You're spending so much time at home. Everyone's working from home now, so actually the budgets that you were probably allowing to move house, you're spending that on your own house now.
Mm.
That's a beautiful thing.
So they're just giving you that money instead.
Yep. They're giving it all to me. I mean, we are still we're in a recession at the moment. So
Hmm.
again, seeing the change in what people are doing is really interesting. So a lot of people are wanting to keep pieces, antique pieces, furniture pieces. Can we reuse them? Sustainability is a massive thing at the moment. I
Mm.
mean, we are in what month are we in? May. It should be sunny. It's raining.
Hmm.
Climate change is a massive thing, and there's so much that comes in between that as well. So if we can do just that little bit to help create a better environment for everyone, why do you need to throw out something that works perfectly fine?
Mm.
We can upcycle it, we can reuse it, we can reupholster it. There's so many options. Um, and so we really hone into those things a lot during when we actually work with clients.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, look, it's been such an incredible journey. I know there's so much more that I would like to cover as well, but obviously I want to appreciate your time. But look, you've done incredibly well, and to be able to build a business, a really successful business during COVID, one of the toughest times that we've seen in our generation, is really, really commendable.
Thank
You know,
you.
but now you're in a position where, Sim, we were talking just before coming on air, and you were talking about, we turn away business all the time. We're privileged to be in a position where you actually get to select the type of clients you want to work with, which is just incredible when you think of where you were just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. But today, again, we've got this tradition. The final question. Um, with everything that you've done so far, with where your business is now as well, what remains like your need to succeed?
My need to succeed. I'd probably say it's driving that passion again. I think it's, wanting to share. For me, it's about sharing. It's sharing knowledge, it's sharing, the values that I have, it's teaching. I get so much joy and happiness through coaching, in people we bring onto the team and sharing the knowledge that I have with everyone. So for me, it's about a continuous journey of sharing, and that's what keeps me going every single day.
Well, Neha Modha, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.